Hang on one second. I just want to ask Joe, because you did pick me up on this. You stopped me to pick me up on it. So you've made it an issue. Just for the record.
You said that I made a comment on it, and
just for the record, should trans women be allowed to be put into women's prisons? Yes or no?
Honestly, I have no understanding on the issue, and I don't want to make a comment.
Fantastic.
But I won't be told that I have an opinion.
And yet you think that trans women athletes should be allowed to compete against biological women?
Yes, I do think that, yeah.
And you
absolutely.
see no inconsistency in these positions?
I don't really know.
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Hope you are feeling good. Today we are going to be checking out a video titled Piers Morgan and Officer TATUM Embarrass Woke Comedian and Expose Double Standards. Wow, I believe this is going to be another interesting one. Let's check it out. Go.
Well, joining me to debate all this is the Piers back, commentator Brandon Tatum of the Officer Tatum YouTube channel, Blair White, host of the Blair White Project podcast, and in the studio, uncensored contributor Esther Krakow, and the sometime comedian James Barr, very famous sometime comedian after last week's... I
am the #1 Israel-Palestine correspondent in the UK.
Yeah, I think you've always had that reputation here as a sharp political commentator.
Please read my book.
Anyway, it's good to have you all. Let's start then with the NHS, the National Health Service here in this country, leading the way, many Americans think, in perhaps re-establishing some basic biological facts in the gender wars. And, of course, obviously also going further and banning puberty blockers, which America has yet to do. So let me ask you, first of all, James, the NHS is to declare sex a biological reality as part of its new constitution. The guidance will mean that trans men should not be housed on single-sex male wards. Transgender people whose gender identity differs from their biological sex may be provided single rooms where appropriate. Patients will have the right to request a person of the same biological sex delivers any intimate care. Phrases like chest feeding will be banned, and so on. All with the backdrop of Daniel Radcliffe saying that J.K. Rowling, who's been campaigning for all this, is disgusting and awful, and he wishes, presumably, he'd never taken her grubby millions. Where do you sit with this? To me, this is not only a victory for common sense, but it's also going to help trans people in the long run. Because a lot of these debates, I think, have been very damaging to the transgender attempt to get to proper fairness and equality, because it has made transgender people the subject of mockery. And I think that's been very damaging. So that's where I sit with this. Where do you sit?
I think that's a confusing take, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure I understand that. I probably need you to unpack it another time. I think it's bullshit. I mean, you know how difficult it was for your mum to get a bed in hospital. You told that story recently, and it was devastating. And they're now saying they're going to separate people. They're going to check what's going on underneath their clothing. Like, this is just insane. They don't have enough resources as it is. It's a completely under-resourced institution, and the people that work for it are amazing, but they need more support, as do trans people, and to vilify trans people is just disgusting.
You've literally said nothing there. That was
Thanks,
a giant
Esther.
nothing burger.
Thank you.
It said where appropriate, which means if the resources are there, then they can have their own rooms. At the end of the day, there's no reason for a trans woman to be on a maternity ward. And I hate to break it to you, but you're not a woman. You have no idea how it feels to have your legs open, being in that intimate environment, trying to give birth. There is no space for someone who identifies as something else other than their gender to be
Why
there.
would a trans woman be giving birth on a maternity ward?
You tell me, because apparently they can do that.
That's a crazy thing
apparently
to
they
ask.
can do that.
That's a crazy thing to suggest.
Here's the reality.
Let me bring in Blair.
Reality. We're coming to a point, and speaking as a trans woman on the panel here, we're getting to a point in society where we have to start to cope with the fact that there have been a lot of excesses with the trans movement. It's done a lot of things incorrectly. It has put people off. It's hurt women. It's hurt children. And I think recalibrating is the only way to get to a point where things are actually, we don't have to worry about women in prisons and in hospital situations. These are things that we've solved long ago. And for whatever reason, it's bubbling back up because of politics. But at the end of the day, when it comes to prisons specifically, biological men should not be in women's prisons. We have enough incidents here in the US of women getting pregnant, getting raped, because at the end of the day, in a lot of states in the US, you don't even have to have reassignment surgery to be in a women's prison. It's just on your safe, though.
Well, you know, Blair, in
And I
Scotland...
think Piers is absolutely correct when he says that not only does this damage women and children, it's also come and it's rebounded and it's damaged trans people. And it's made people look at the community like, what in the world is going on?
Yeah, and on that point about the prisons, I mean, the Scottish National Party, which is the ruling party in Scotland, the leaders just resigned, closely following on the heels of the previous leader. And it all goes back, actually, to when the previous leader, Nicola Sturgeon, insisted on putting a male rapist into a female prison. And at that point, most Scottish people rose up and went, this is completely insane. Why would you put somebody who's in a male prison, having committed crimes of rape as a biological male, into a women's prison where he can attack other women? I mean, it was mind-bogglingly insane.
It is insane, and it's because the fear of being called transphobic, even the state fears it, which is really scary.
Well,
and at the end of the day, it's like...
But actually, let me ask James. Blair, just hang on one sec. James, you literally, you come in, week out, and you talk for trans people, and you tell them how they should all be thinking about this.
No, that's
You've
not
literally,
true.
well, hang on, you've just literally heard a trans woman, identifying as a trans woman, explain to you why you're wrong. Are you going to now tell her, as a gay man, are you now going to tell her how she should be feeling?
I just wanted to pick up on the point you said where, you know, people in politics are afraid to be transphobic. That is absolutely not the case in this country, where our Prime Minister will happily make transphobic jokes and get away with it.
Well, it's shifting now. It's shifting now, but we're leaving an era where it was absolutely, you know, a thing that was happening where you couldn't speak against the movement. You couldn't be seen as on the wrong side of history. Now it's shifting because people are becoming aware of these excesses that we're talking about.
But is that okay
and there's this
for
weird
a Prime Minister
dissonance.
to make those kind of jokes?
Is that okay? There is no room.
I don't really care about jokes. I don't really care about jokes. And the idea that jokes...
And by the way, just to be clear, the joke the Prime Minister made was in reference to the fact that the Labour leader is incapable of saying what a woman is, right? And believes that 99% of women don't have a penis. Okay, let's not get into the graphic.
And if we want to get very literal and slightly personal, that sort of thing affects me exactly 0%. But men, trans women, and biological males being in women's prisons is actually going on a realistic level going to affect me more because it makes me look like one of these people. So if I had to choose between which one I want to stop happening, I really don't care about jokes. And because I'm a normal person, I care more about women's safety.
And again, I come to you, James. I will come to you, Officer TATUM. You're waiting very patiently. But James, again, week in, week out, you are enraged by all this. You think it's terrible that trans people should be able to do all these things. They should be able to compete against biological women at sport. They should be able to put in women's prisons. They should be able to do the blah, blah, blah.
I've never
blah, blah.
spoken on women's prisons, actually.
So you don't think they should be?
That's a misquote.
So just
I think...
Well, hang on, just to be clear. Hang on, okay. Hang on, you put me up.
Yeah.
So let me give you the chance to clarify. Do you think trans people should be put into women's prisons?
I think that they should be safe, as should all prisoners.
Hang on, that wasn't the question.
That's not
my
an
answer,
answer,
Piers.
though.
I'm not going to get dragged into it. I'm not getting dragged into it.
You dragged yourself into it.
I don't understand the
You
prison
denied
system.
ever saying it.
But I'm not
now
a trans,
asking.
but
Hang on.
as been pointed out, I'm not a trans woman.
Hang on.
I'm not a trans man.
Oh, now you're backing off because
No,
there's a trans
I
woman
have
actually
always
here.
said that. I have always said that, but so
Here's the
often I'm
issue.
thrown into this panel without a trans person being here,
now
and
you've
I
got
have
one.
to be the.
now
So
you are
thank
going
God
to
you're
look at
here
that.
to be able to talk about it.
Let me just ask. Hang on one second,
ask-
everyone. Hang on one second. I just want to ask Joe, because you did pick me up on this. You stopped me to pick me up on it. So you've made it an issue. Just for the record.
You said that I made a comment on it, and
just for the record, should trans women be allowed to be put into women's prisons? Yes or no?
Honestly, I have no understanding on the issue, and I don't want to make a comment.
Fantastic.
But I won't be told that I have an opinion.
And yet you think that trans
the
women
issue-
athletes should be allowed to compete against biological women?
Yes, I do think that,
Do.
yeah.
And you
absolutely.
see no inconsistency in these positions?
I don't really know,
Right.
because I haven't made a comment on the prison.
All right, let me bring it up as a
Because he's
Tatum.
scared to be.
I'm not scared.
He's scared to
Honestly,
be
I'm not.
shamed.
I
The
think
same thing that Blair said. Let me talk. The same thing that Blair was saying, that people are afraid to be called transphobic and all this stuff. And so are you.
I'm not
You
afraid.
won't be honest and tell the truth about the fact that it's absolutely mind-blowingly ridiculous to think that a man with a penis that's impersonating a woman or think he's a woman can be in a women's prison. That's insane.
But this is
you
where the
seem
disagreement
to you
is.
seem to think it's no disagreement, brother. The man has a penis.
It's
and
a
he's
woman.
in a cell with a
They're
woman.
She's a woman. If she,
With a penis.
No.
A woman with a
You don't-
penis.
I believe a trans woman
This
is
is
a
a
woman.
problem with
ending up
society.
pregnant.
This is
I-
a problem
I
with
don't know
society.
Don't all talk
going on.
over each other.
Let me finish.
Yeah, let him
This
finish.
is the problem with society. We need to be logical, reasonable, and operate in facts.
And
It is a
respectful.
man that identify as a woman. It's not a woman. It's very simple. Why can't we get that correct?
Well, why can't
And
we
here's
ask?
the
Let's
thing,
ask Blair.
I don't know how
Blair,
things-
as the only trans person on this panel, what do you feel about what Officer Tatum just said there?
I 100% agree. And I don't know exactly what goes on overseas in prisons. I'm an American, but what I do know here is just about once a month, there's some kind of story about a female inmate in a federal prison becoming pregnant, being raped, because at the end of the day, these are biological males with the capability to impregnate women, to rape women. And the idea that trans safety should always trump women's safety, I just don't understand that. And the other problem with people like this is they never offer any solutions. So for me,
Never.
there are such things as LGBT wards in certain prisons in America. And for me, that's a very easy solution to
That's a
this
great
problem.
solution.
Put trans people in LGBT wards. That makes the trans person safe, and it also keeps women safe.
Yeah, I completely agree with that solution. I think my issue with this conversation is that it feels like a smokescreen for transphobia, and a lot of the time people do
It's
hide
not,
behind
though.
it. But
This
a lot
is
of
real
people do.
stuff.
I don't think
There
anybody
are a
here
lot
is
of women-
transphobic.
There are a lot of women, biological women, as you would say, in women's prison that are also raping women,
As
and
I
no
would
one is
say.
talking about that. No one's discussing that. Everyone
It's
just
not
talks
as I
about the
would say,
1% of trans people that live in this country that probably aren't going to prison.
All right, let me
It's
bring
all
it.
made
Let me.
into this
All right,
big
let me bring
deal,
it.
and it isn't.
As you've made clear, James, you're not prepared to pass comment on this, and we know why, because you don't want to say what is actually the obvious reality, which is it's insane, because you fear that you will be accused of being transphobic, which is, of course, very ironic, because that is the word that is used about all of us whenever we try and stand up for women's rights.
I do understand why
Even
you're saying
me.
that, but by coming on here and supporting trans people in the way I do, I'm constantly called
I support
groomer
trans people.
by your fans.
But you
Hang
know
on.
what? There's
Is that
such
not
a
also
thing.
Hang on,
scary?
I
It's
support-
very brave of
As I
me
said
to
to you,
have this opinion.
as I said to you, and as I've been consistent in print and
But you've
on air,
ignored what I said.
I have always defended trans people's rights to fairness and equality.
Oh, wow. What an interesting conversation. I would really like to commend Piers based on, I would like to commend Piers for inviting a trans individual to also give a comment regarding this topic. I would also like to commend Piers for, using this platform to address issues like this, because I believe that it's totally absurd, it's totally unacceptable putting biological men that identify as women in a female prison. I believe that is totally unacceptable. Just like Officer Tatum have said, that those people identifying as women, that biologically they are men, so they have penises. So which means, if possible, if they're identifying as a woman, they should be placed, since biologically they are men, they should be placed in men prison instead of being placed in women prison. And if it's even possible, they should have a prison for trans people instead of placing them in women prison, which I believe that is totally wrong. Based on the fact, the trans woman have stated in this video that this same thing have happened in America, and there have been a lot of news whereby trans women have been placed in women prison. At the end of the day, they end up impregnating the women in the prison, which has really proven that ideology, which have really proven it wrong, because this is a proof that you have seen in front of you, just by the example the trans woman gave, that trans women being placed in women prison, that they end up impregnating the women. Don't you think, seeing issues like this, seeing cases like this, don't you think a solution should be provided where trans women can be placed in trans prison, or they can be biologically placed in men prison? Because I feel they are putting the right of trans above the right of women, which I believe that is totally unacceptable. I can gladly say right now that we are now in a very dark age whereby people tend to avoid the truth, tend to avoid reality, because I believe most of those people are suffering from mental delusion, because what they perceive to be truth is not actually the truth. Because I, for one, I see, based on logic, based on facts, based on reasonability, I see no reason why a trans woman should be placed in women prison. Because at the end of the day, they end up causing harm to the women. And at the end of causing harm to the women, because we should also consider the rights of women instead of considering only the rights of trans. We should also consider the rights of the women that are also in the prison with the trans. We should consider their rights. We should consider their safety instead of just considering the rights of the trans, which I believe that is totally wrong. And just by the reason James has given, by the fact he has stated, I believe he wasn't able to answer the question Piers was asking him, that does he think it's right for trans women should be placed in women prison. He wasn't able to answer the question because he's afraid of being labeled or being called as someone that's transphobic. So he wasn't able to ask the question. So I believe we should try to protect the women instead of always trying to protect the trans women. I think we should also consider the feelings of the women. We should also consider the rights of the women. We should also consider the safety of the women instead of just considering the safety of the trans women. Because I believe there could be a better way to solve this problem by providing a prison for trans women instead of putting the trans women in the same prison as the women. Biologically, if there's no resources to solve this problem, they should be placed in men's prison instead of being placed in women's prison. And a good example is the case that Piers Morgan talks about in Scotland, whereby someone that is a trans woman that is accused of rape is being placed in women's prison. I believe that is totally insane. That is totally absurd. Someone that is accused of rape being placed, accused of rape and identified as a trans woman being placed in women's prison. I believe that is totally unacceptable. And I've really learned a lot just by listening to every one of the speakers. I would also like to commend the NHRS for their decision to ban puberty blocker, because I, for one, I see no reason why children should be given puberty blocker. Children that are below the age of 18 that cannot make an informed decision for themselves, I see no reason why they should be given puberty blocker, because these children, they don't have the knowledge to be able to make a good decision for themselves. At least they should be allowed to get to the age of 18 where they can make decision for themselves. And if they decide and insist to take the puberty blocker, that is their own decision. But in a situation whereby they are below the age of below the age of 18 to be able to make good decision for themselves, I believe they shouldn't be given puberty blocker. I would really like to commend the decision of the NHIS for coming up with such decision, which I believe is very good. I've really learned a lot just by listening to every one of the speaker. So I would like to hear your comments. Keep the conversation rolling. Don't forget, click on the subscribe button, click on the like button. Do have a nice day.